Well, Lewis, you're very different from the traditional candidates that have been announced by the PAP for this election and for previous elections. Why do you think the PAP wanted a candidate like yourself to stand on its ticket?
I think the key now is that we need diversity. We need a diversity of views, we need a diversity of candidates, and I think that's going to be very important in any discussion. I always say that it's very easy to have a discussion with like-minded people. That's important. But as we move forward, I think it's even more important that we have a discussions with people who are not like-minded. And that's what we've been doing the last 14 years in my advocacy work, really gathering differing views and trying to find the common ground, trying to find the win-win way forward. If we are always just talking to people who agree on the same things, I don't think we are going to be able to progress. And I think now it's crucial as well that we are already having this diversity of views, and we should have a diversity of people who are here to represent these differing views.
Lewis, when you were approached to stand as a PAP candidate, did you have any reservations? You're a young man, you have a young family, a young daughter. Were you afraid? Did you have any fears about getting and entering public life?
Well, I always said it wasn't an overnight decision to enter politics. I started with grassroots work, helping out at the Meet the People sessions, some of the community work in Chongpang back in 2008. So I really went in there with an open mind, with an invitation from Minister Shanmugam to come and see whether I enjoyed this work, whether I could find value in it, and whether I could contribute as well. And while it wasn't an overnight decision, it was an easy one. I found that I was able to help residents. I found that I was able to make a difference in their lives, in the community as well. And that's something I wanted to do. I think everybody sees me as an animal activist. For the last
Yeah.
14 years, I've won the animal activist hat. But I think I want to do more and do more in more diverse ways as well. And I share with people that, while I'm animal activist, last year I didn't win the Animal Activist of the Year award. I won the Advocate of the Year award. And what I bring into politics now is that I have been able to engage people, to empower them, to inspire them, and to mobilize them. Getting ACRES from this one-man fight to a team of over 20 over full-time staff members now, to a revenue of over $1 million last year. And that's done through really the engaging, the empowering, the inspiring, and mobilizing. And as I sat down with my family to decide whether I wanted to enter politics, I really, the decision was quite simple. Obviously, I wanted to. Obviously, I wanted to do more for the community and do more for Singapore.
Lewis, you mentioned a lot of terms that are common in advocacy: empowering, to inspire. In a previous interview, you talked about the social policy systems in Singapore. You said that we shouldn't give it as handouts. We should empower the less fortunate. We should inspire them. What do you think are the changes that we should see in Singapore's welfare system in the way that we help the less fortunate, the lower income earners in Singapore?
Well, I think if you look at our social welfare system, it's probably one of the best in the world. Um, we don't give free hands out to everyone like a lot of other countries, but we make sure that there are systems in place and there are people who fall through the cracks. They receive some assistance. But I think it's important to give. But I just briefed the grassroots team yesterday that while we give a resident need, financial assistance, rations, food, we should have the mindset of how we can stop giving. How can I make sure that in 3-4 months time he or she wouldn't need the financial assistance anymore? That's the very important mindset change that I want to achieve. If we look at how we help the kids living in our rental flat community, we want to make sure that as they grow up, they won't be living in the rental flat community for the rest of their lives. So we give, but at the same time we want to make sure we empower. So how can we help you to get out of this, or get up this slippery slope you're trying to climb up? So, I've always talked about how with the rental flat kids, we give a lot, and I also don't want to reinforce their mindset that they can only receive. I want to reinforce a mindset that everyone in Singapore can give. So with the rental flat community, we were thinking how we can set up social enterprises, how we can bring these kids out into the community to start a business, to earn an income, so their parents are going to be proud that, wow, my kid is bringing back an income to help as well. But the kids also feel good about themselves. They're doing something for the family, but very importantly, they're doing something for the community. So part of the money we can use to also donate to community projects in Nee Soon. So they feel that they are giving back as well. And I think that's going to be beautiful, that we can empower them with the belief that they are, like all of us, they can make a difference. And if we can do that as well, with not just the rental flat community, but all of us living around here helping, So community projects that are developed with the community and run by the community, then we truly have our kampong spirit. And I think that's important now as we look forward to SG50. Let's not forget the values of the pioneers who built Singapore. And let's make sure that we not just reinforce it, but we strengthen it further.
Louis, I hear you, and your dedication and passion to help the less fortunate, particularly the youth, clearly comes true. But here's a question that I want to put to you. A lot of times in the lower income families, parents are working, but they still are unable to make ends meet. The wage differential in Singapore is a huge problem. Income and wealth inequality is a huge problem. How do you think we can better empower those who are already working, the working poor? What can we do to help the working poor make a decent living in Singapore? Do you think an idea of a minimum wage, we have the progressive wage model, which is only sector specific. Do you think this should be expanded to other sectors, or should it be a nationwide minimum wage? How do you think we should tackle this disparity in wages?
My reply has always been that our policies are very sound. There is an income gap in Singapore, and what we're doing is we just increase the tax for the higher bracket, and using that money then to set up programs for the less fortunate, those in the lower bracket, and seeing how with Skills Future we can develop the skills so that we can increase their income. And I think those policies are sound. But where we always fail is how we communicate the policies. And I see that's the important part of the MPs, to go down on the ground to explain to people now as we do the house visits. No, these are the different programs in place. And if you look at Skills Future, there is a huge variety where people always get, I don't know what is that. There's so much there that a lot of people get lost. And I think that if we are able to explain it better, communicate it better to our residents, then obviously there is going to be a rise in their skill sets and a progression in their career, and we can then narrow the income gap. At the same time, we have looked into the minimum wage for the cleaners, the security profession, so those are in place. But I always say that the biggest room in any house is the room for improvement. And what we need to do now, as we have introduced these new policies, is to see whether they are really working on the ground. So again, listening to the residents, listening to the feedback, and then making the changes whenever that's necessary.
I think you talked a lot about wanting to listen to the ground, communicating policies, communicating issues. I think this is something that's very clear that the PAP are going to put a lot of effort into, the way they've announced candidates, the way they're putting great emphasis on the importance of grassroots work, on the importance of communication in this coming general election. But a lot has also been spoken about municipal issues, about the management and running of a town and a town council. Can I have your thoughts on whether town councils should still remain managed and run by politicians, or should it be professionalized, where there is an organization, professional managing agents who run town councils regardless of the estate in which it's in?
I think that the current system is working well, and I say this from my experience on the ground now, working with the town council. I just did a house visit for 316A. The town council was following me, and it's a valuable thing to have, where MPs working closely with the agencies involved and trying to solve the municipal issue. But I know the concerns there, that they feel that then the MP's job is really just fixing the broken tap, making sure the trees are cut properly. But I think that's one part of the MP work. Of course, I agree that ultimately we're here to draft policies. We're here to be in Parliament to make sure that policies are being drafted and implemented for the better of Singapore and Singaporeans. But at the same time, we must remember that we are here to serve the residents. We're here to make sure that municipal issues are looked into, but we're also here to make sure that there is this kampong spirit within our community. You're going to be tired of me saying the kampong spirit, but you might have heard it before, but I am here to walk the talk. As I've told you before, that I'm not here to sit behind the desk and to reply to emails, but I'm here to be on the ground, to walk the talk, which is what I've done for the last 14 years. But if I come back to the municipal issues, I think a lot of time what the residents really want is that we are listening, that their feedback is really taken and something is done. And that's what I've been doing now. When I go to the house visits, they tell me that there's something that they want looked into. I look into it. I tell them back personally, this is what we have done. Sometimes, a number of times we can't really meet what they want. But the issue then is be able to explain to them why we can't do it this way, why there are other factors to take into consideration. But the key now is being able to explain. And I told my grassroots, the key now is the personalized approach. So the house visits, I think if you have read, sometimes I take a long time. I make sure I try my very best to go into the house, to sit down, to talk, to listen. And I probably can't finish our 130 over blocks. It will take me some time, but I feel it's important now to really let people realize that I'm sincerely here to listen, to make sure that things get better at a municipal level, but also at a national level.
Well, Louis, you talked about all these things that an MP has to do, and it sounds like a lot. It sounds like it's more than a full-time. You need 48 hours a day to achieve this.
You
Can
see
I
my
have-
eye bags.
Yes. Well, mine too, but that's just more because I sleep late. But more importantly, I wanted to ask you, you talked about all these things that MPs have to do. Do you think that there should be a greater push towards having more full-time MPs? MPs who are on the ground 24/7 and it's a full-time job. Do you think that we should push for more of those in Parliament? More of
You know,
them,
I've
I'm
always so the key now is diversity. I
Yeah.
think it's important to have a few MPs who are full time,
Yeah.
a few MPs who have a full time job, a few MPs who are also the political office holders,
Right.
and that's where we bring diversity to the team. I think if in each GRC, in each or with some of the SMCs, if they're full time MPs, I think that's sufficient to make sure that the ground issues are looked into, make sure that residents' needs are looked into as well. But at the same time, also to have MPs who have their own full time job. So to make sure they can bring the element of whatever the businesses they're in, bring those views into Parliament as well. So that the key now is diversity.
I think that is something that, like we started this conversation with, you bring a lot of diversity to the table. And maybe I can bring it back a little bit to your advocacy work. You did a lot to champion animal rights in Singapore. You did a lot and you spoke up a lot about it. But during your advocacy work at ACRES, there were a lot of times where you were not in agreement with the government, where the government's view and stand on issues were not. And you spoke about this previously in an interview where you said that collaboration is the way forward to work with the government. As we move towards a system where politics is no longer dominated by a single party, by the PAP, and the population demand for more voices to be heard, a pluralistic system is growing and developing. Do you see the PAP starting to work in collaboration with other political parties? And do you think that this is a sustainable and healthy long-term goal for Singapore where political parties collaborate instead of being antagonistic towards each other?
I don't think we are antagonistic towards other parties.
Oh no,
but,
I
you
don't
know,
think you are either, but I'm
um,
just wondering what's your views.
I think in terms of
Going forward.
collaboration, different political parties will have different views.
Yep.
That is going to always be the case, and collaboration on that front will probably be more difficult. But I think what we see with the PAP now is that we are opening up for collaboration with people. We're here to engage. We're here to listen to their views. If you look at, a lot of people say now we're trying to get the popular vote, but I think that it is a time where we have change for the better. If you look at the legislation we've introduced in the past 4 or 5 years, if you look at the policies, we've gone through a lot of public consultations. We've gone through a lot of public feedback. We have, I think, 2 private members' bill as well, which in Parliament it's really the people's bill. It's not the government coming to say we need this, but it really is the people saying, please, let's consider this. And, like the Animals and Birds bill, that was
Yep.
passed in Parliament with MPs talking about it.
Yep.
So I think the key is collaboration on the ground now, where we can encompass all the views of the people and try to find that win-win solution. Very easy to say,
Yes.
but very hard to find that
Certainly.
win-win solution, which, I think we've achieved on many fronts with the advocacy work I've done in the last 14
Certainly.
years.
I think you are a leader in civil society to show other civil society leaders how you can collaborate with the government. And I agree with you. I think the government has, in recent years, has spoken a lot about the involvement of civil society, of civic society, in making decisions, in participating, in providing feedback to the state. I think this is a very good.
People always ask me, how do I know this works?
Yep.
But I shared with them my journey. For the first 8 years, or about 7, 8 years at ACRES, we really were confrontational. And I know that was people, man, this little boy is crazy. But we tried the really combative approach, the name and shame, the destructive criticisms.
Yeah.
And I sat down with my team and I realized, I got a fair bit of support, a lot of publicity, but in terms of really fundamental policy changes, where were we? And we realized we weren't really achieving much, which in essence, very popular, but not very effective. And I then changed it and said, let's try this. Let's try the more collaborative, more constructive approach. So still speak your mind, but speaking your mind with an aim of finding that more constructive, collaborative, and win-win approach. And I realized that very quickly, fundamentally, we changed a lot of policies. You realize we started a lot of pilot programs from trap, neuter, release, manage for dogs, to allowing our residents in Chong Pang to keep cats, stopping the culling of cats, legislative changes. All that happened when we tried the more collaborative, constructive approach. And so, I always said, I am here to make changes, not to be popular and to win the popular vote, but to really make effective changes on the ground. And that's obviously the approach then is the more collaborative, constructive one.
If I was living here, I would definitely support you. I like.
Shift over, come on.
Are there any BTO flats around here?
We're sitting here at the new BTO actually.
Maybe I'll look for balance of sale flats. I really like what you're saying. I'm impressed by what you have to say. But on a more practical level, if you're elected as a member of parliament for Nee Soon, what would you do within your division to ensure that there's greater feedback, greater listening of what's on the ground? You're just one man. There's only so much you can do. There are only so many houses you can visit. Do you have any ideas in mind, any platforms that you would use to try to obtain strong ground feedback on not just what's happening within the estate, but on the policies and decisions being debated in parliament and being proposed by members of the government?
I'm just one man, but I'm one man who is very passionate, very determined, and very strong-willed. And I think it's not just this one man, but we have a very dedicated team of full-time staff members here, of grassroots, who are equally passionate, equally determined, and who equally want to make sure that we change for the better. And I've just met up with them, shared with them my journey, but the key now is I told them that we need a more personalized approach. So we can still do our events with 1,000 people, but the impact is very little. 1,000 people see me, but I can spend probably 30 seconds shaking their hand each. But my goal now is let's do smaller scale projects where it's more personal, where like you see the tent, we're going to have an event here that's more small scale now. So not just talking about it, I'm walking the talk already, and so that I can spend more time sitting down with the residents, really listening to them. I want to do house visits. If you read now, I don't want to do the touch and go.
Yep.
I'm not here to shake your hand and say that, hi, I'm Louis, thank you for your support, and go to the next house. But as my commando background, I try my very best to breach the door, to go into the house where they're most comfortable at. I'm entering their territory, speak to them. Most of them always serve a drink. We sit down, we have a chat, we have a drink together. And that's where they open up to really tell you their stories, what they really feel, what they really want. And that's valuable. As I share, a lot of people say, hurry up, man, we can't finish the whole plot. But I always say that the important is not quantity, but quality. And if we can achieve that, this personalized approach, this taking time to talk, I think we can achieve miracles in not just Nee Soon East, not just Nee Soon, but in our country, in Singapore now, where every feedback is valued. Every feedback which we probably can't incorporate, but to explain why we can't, that is going to be the essential and crucial part.
Well, Louis, to end off this interview, I'll just ask you a quick question. Could you tell me the 3 issues based on your ground knowledge, based on visiting residents, like you said, going into their houses and having a chat with them? What do you think are the 3 big issues that Singaporeans, or particularly residents in Nee Soon, would like to see debated, would like to see policy changes, alternatives being proposed by the government in the next session of Parliament?
Well, that's going to be a difficult one to just list 3. But I think with Nee Soon East as an example, a lot of our residents have stayed here for a long time, 20, 30 years. And these are residents who have really come out from the kampong into the HDB. And a lot of them, whenever I said share stories, obviously they share about their kampong times, how things were a lot more close-knitted than the community. So one issue that's always raised is how we can bring this kampong spirit back. And that's why we're sitting here in this new BTO where it's a lot more younger residents. They never lived in the kampong, they never knew what it was like. But I say that's the beauty of Nee Soon East, where we have the people who came up from the kampong who can then share their experience with our younger population now and bring this community close-knit together. That's on a constituency level. And a national level then is to, when you talk about kampong spirit, it isn't in any legislation. But we have this word called volunteerism, which is a new thing. In the past, we knew to care for each other. We never came back from work and say, so how many hours do you volunteer today? Or, can you volunteer to cook for all of us? It's in us. It's ingrained in our spirit. But now we talk about volunteer hours, CIP, VIA, service learning. But I think we also need, on a national level, to increase volunteerism so that we remember that we're not just Singapore is our home, a place where we work in, but a place where we can contribute back to the community. And so the volunteerism part, the compassionate part is something that I'm going to push for at a national level. The second thing that I've always wanted to focus on is our total fertility rate. I'm not a fan of these big words. I've always said that's one of the issues. We use these big jargons, we use that this is a policy, but we always talk about total fertility rate as a dollars and cents game.
Right.
We have the baby bonus, we talk about how Singapore is in dire need of more Singaporeans, but I want to bring it back to a more personal level. That's why I'm a very young parent, my daughter is 1.5 years. If you go on my Facebook page, I share all the videos of her to share the other side of the beauty of having a kid, the beauty of parenthood. Let's focus on not just the dollars and cents. Baby bonus is important. I know for a lot of Singaporeans it is, but let's also share about this journey of being a parent, how beautiful an experience it is to bring up my daughter, and how we've been waiting 1.5 years and her first official word seems to be bye-bye. So after that long wait. But that's the beauty part, to share with young Singaporeans now. But at the same time, as someone who is new to this, I think I'm able to relate to them what their concerns are, what the difficulties they are facing. And again, the key, listen to their feedback. We don't have the answers. Quite clearly, we don't have the answers for total fertility rate. But to get their feedback then and to incorporate it into our national policies and seeing how we can improve further. I think those, you asked for 3, but those is sort of 2.5 really. And I think that while I bring diversity, while I will share all the residents' view in Parliament, these are the 2 core things that I think are essential for the future of Singapore.
One last yes/no question. I wasn't planning to ask this, but since you brought it up, about total fertility rate. A lot has been debated about the benefits accorded to single mothers. Particularly in the last couple of weeks, a lot of letters have gone back and forth. Minister Tan has said that they're reconsidering the decisions. Can I have your view, yes or no? Should single mothers be accorded the same level of benefits, maternity benefits, as married mothers?
Do you know, a resident actually asked me that, and she's living here in Green Walk, and she is a single mother with 2 children. And I said to her, I went into her house, 2 kids watching TV, but I sat down with her to listen to her, and I completely agree that with 2 parents you obviously have all the benefits, but the single parent actually is more difficult for them, and yet they have less benefits. So the answer is yes. We have to start to tweak policies now to make sure that we are in line with what's happening on the ground, to make sure that we are listening to residents' feedback, the difficulties they're facing, and then see how we can improve now. And I think, again, we're doing that. As we are talking about this, Minister Tan Chuan Jin is already saying we are going to review this. And I think that's the important part now of, the second part of not Minister Tan saying, let me look into this. Same way when he was Minister for Manpower, when we talk about CPF. It's not me looking into this, but let's form a committee of people that's down on the ground, people who have experience on this issue. Let them get the feedback, let them come up with an independent report, and then let's see whether we can meet the recommendations of this report. That's the crucial part now of, remember, engaging the ground, empowering them to come up with the solutions, inspiring them that, look, this is possible, and mobilizing when we need help, come forth and give us all your feedback. If we can achieve that, I think Singapore SG 100 is going to be even more beautiful.